The Children's Society is a national charity working with some of the most vulnerable children in the UK. We've got a very long history of working with refugees and migrants, since starting with our work with child refugees who came through in 1939 through the Kindertransport. Since then, our refugee and migrant services have grown and grown, and we now have specialist services all across the country working with refugee, migrant and trafficked young people.
Some of those young people might be from escaping conflict or war in their own countries. Some of them might be orphaned at very young ages, have maybe grown up in abject poverty or on the streets, which has made them even more susceptible and more vulnerable to exploitation.
Of society, the way your parents raise you, so no matter how you feel or what you have feelings. So I think, again, all these models of CBT and trauma-focused CBT, they're all great, and they are, and I think they can be very helpful. It applies the same way to the clients. The same way that some certain words also don't translate well. For instance, the word flash a meaning across. But again, if you know that, you can find different ways to explain a concept like flashbacks.
Being in UK for such a long time and not having the right data to stay in this country is a very stressful time at some point, because you're still living under the fear of being sent back to where you don't want to go. And in this matter, I guess a lot of more support should be given to the young person, as in appointments with their solicitors or lawyers, so they can understand more and be able to express and say the right things which has happened to them, not being scared of not expressing everything which has happened, which could help on their case.
Young people often may not recognise themselves as being exploited. They may not understand that what they've experienced is exploitation. They may not even have a concept of what exploitation is, and that might be very culturally specific. But the important point is that trafficking of children is child abuse, and that young people can't consent to their own exploitation. And as such, it should be dealt with in the same way by professionals as any other form of child abuse, and safeguarding processes followed.
If a young person is accompanied to an appointment by an adult or a group of adults and it's not clear what that relationship is, it's really important for professionals working with them to speak to the young person separately from those adults that are accompanying them, and to actually ask the young person who they are and what their relationship is to them.
The doctor should actually see the connection which these two persons have with each other, and actually have some privacy with the patient, with the young person in this case, to talk about stuff and give him some support and make him feel comfortable on speaking up, because that's how the young person probably might speak up and let the doctor know, so therefore the doctor could take further steps into reporting it to the police or all the stuff. So this is a kind of way where the young person could be saved.
If language is an issue, it's really important not to ask any adults that come with a child to translate for them, because obviously if you've got any suspicions about those adults, then you don't know if they're going to be translating properly. And so if an interpreter is needed, then we would definitely advise getting one who is not connected with those people that have come to the appointment with the child.
It's often the case that information will be missing. You might not have access to very detailed medical records. There may be huge gaps in a young person's history. And it's also often the case that a young person will not disclose that they're being exploited, and that they may not even see themselves as being a trafficking victim. This very idea can often feel disempowering to young people. And so we as professionals need to take our own view and to be curious. And if we see any signs, any indicators where something just feels not quite right, we need to act on that curiosity, and we need to take the appropriate steps to safeguard that young person.
What do we know about this young person? Where were they found? How have they come into contact with that professional? Were they, for example, found in a police raid of a cannabis factory? Have they been picked up by the police for petty theft, pickpocketing? Have they been found in questionable or exploitative labour situations such as nail bars or car washes or care homes? Similarly, has a young person been found in possession of drugs or dealing drugs or carrying large amounts of money on them that would be unusual for a person of that age? Do we know whether they have been reported as having missing episodes from their placement or from where they're staying? And is there a plausible reason why they haven't been registered with a GP or had any contact with medical professionals up until now? Are they in education? Are they able to give answers about where they're going to school or who their doctor is? These are all things that, taken together, might help us build that picture of whether that young person is actually at risk or being exploited.
Although many professionals will take concerns raised about trafficking very seriously, it is possible that you could come up against some professionals who may not take things as seriously as you would like and may not see this as a situation of a child in need who needs protecting. It's just really important to keep pushing and advocating if you believe that the proper response hasn't been taken, to ensure that child's needs are met. It's also really important to advocate for the local authority to make a referral to the national referral mechanism to ensure that the child is recognised as a victim of trafficking.
A lot of our young people have had either such a lack of care growing up, they might not have known their parents may have died, they may have sold them off, traffickers eventually came along their way. So there's often a lot of negative experiences with either adults in general or people in authority. So that might be one of the reasons why sometimes young people struggle to open up to yet another adult. Even though we come across all safe and nice, how do they know that they can trust you, let alone open about real difficulties? Before meeting up with an interpreter and the client together, we would always first meet up with the interpreter. We would go through some of the basics. So what is therapy? How does it work? What does it look like? How do we work together? Because you're actively bringing a third person into the room. It can also be really valuable, I think, because the interpreter will, of course, be from the same original country as the client. And therefore, they often have unique insights into culture, language difficulties, or anything else that might arise.
When building a relationship with young people, time is always going to be a pressure. And we understand that you may only have, a few minutes with a young person. But what's essential is, in the time that you have, working with that time, just trying to build a relationship with that young person. To just ask them a few questions about what their interests are, to take a genuine interest in them as a human being and not go straight in with questions about their past or about their medical history. Often we find that sharing a little bit about yourself and just engaging with that person, even if you do that for a minute or 2 minutes, it can make all the difference in putting a young person at ease. And then hopefully that leading to them disclosing more and really engaging with you as a professional.
So coming to therapy, it is so crucially important that we believe them. And it sounds really obvious, but I think, again, they're so surrounded by interviews or professionals sometimes who don't believe them. So, and I think if they have got that person that say, I do believe you, I believe that you are 16 or that you are from a particular country or that you have been trafficked, I think can be very healing.
Once I started counselling, I did really see the point of it engaging and speaking up about your thoughts and about the fears, because at some point it does give you release and you'll see things from a different point of view.
Given the high proportion of trafficked young people who have experienced some form of sexual abuse, whether it be for commercial gain on behalf of traffickers or simply as a control technique, it's really important that they can access specialist sexual health advice and testing. Given the abuse, this advice and testing needs to be done in a very sensitive manner, asking questions gently, allowing a young person to take breaks and suggesting that these might be needed, and really treading very carefully around discussing their sexual history. It's also common that the young people we support who've been through sexual abuse may feel very unsure about their sexuality and how they kind of frame what they've been through. And so this is something that really needs to be taken on board when carrying out testing and treatment.
Many, in fact most of the young people that we work with will have actually experienced multiple forms of exploitation along the way. It's not just the presenting issue, which is often the be-all and end-all of their stories. So not only have they got traumatic experiences from where they've come from living in poverty or escaping from war, they've also maybe had very traumatic journeys to the UK, and then even when they arrive in the UK, the exploitation may continue and the abuse may continue. And this all amounts to young people having multiple and complex needs and mental health issues as well, are a huge issue that we see with our young people.
We often see young people being accommodated in highly unsuitable housing. Sometimes this is semi-independent accommodation without the necessary on-site support for that young person, including when they might have difficulties sleeping because of the trauma that they've been through and because of what's taken place on their journey. Another challenge is that where young people are placed in foster care, this can be really, really helpful and really beneficial. And where that relationship is nurturing, it can provide just the right environment for a trafficked child to thrive. But unfortunately, foster carers receive little to no training and support around the specifics of caring for and fostering a trafficked young person. Given this, we commonly see huge challenges in that relationship. And unfortunately, foster carers can unwittingly re-traumatise trafficking victims by replicating behaviour that they may have experienced from abusive family members or from their traffickers. Common problems such as household chores that can be very triggering for a trafficking victim who may have experienced domestic servitude or labour exploitation, alongside challenges with issues like curfews and being given the necessary freedom that a trafficking victim may crave after it was taken away from them, or the matter of discipline and how to handle this sensitively can be big problems. And so often young people we work with end up asking to move foster placements multiple times, which overall is really not in their best interests. And so the more that can be done to provide the necessary training and support to those foster carers, really, the better.
We would thoroughly recommend joining local safeguarding children boards subgroups, where many of them will be running subgroups focusing specifically on modern slavery and exploitation, to ensure that there is as much information sharing as possible across different sectors and different professionals, to really kind of map the trends, share intelligence, and also work together to develop best practice.
Multi-agency working is also essential when planning for and trying to prevent the very real risk of young people going missing. Many trafficked children go missing, often within the first 72 hours of their being taken into care. And so we need to work together to try and prevent that risk. We also need to involve young people in that process as part of safety planning to explore what helps them feel safe, if there are places they need to avoid, and if there are things that we can do as professionals to work with them to keep them safe.